Gang, settle down, since you like that expression so much. Okay, so now closing out our cooking methods with braising and stewing. Okay, moist cooking methods, braising and stewing.
Moist cooking methods, braising and stewing.
Now, both of these, we know both of these cuts are long, slow, moist cooking methods, right? What are they meant to do?
Tenderize.
Tenderize, right? Tenderize. So we're taking tough cuts and tenderizing them. These are very good techniques to make something that's maybe not so expensive. A tough cut of meat generally is less expensive. It's a good way to take that tough cut, less expensive cut of meat and turn it into something really good, right? Braising, my favorite cooking technique, because you can take something very, very tough, which is very, very flavorful, and turn it into a really excellent dish. You know, probably braised short ribs, probably one of my favorite dishes. Right? Real
That's what you're making
flavorful
today?
meat.
Braised short ribs?
Excuse me?
Making braised short ribs?
No, I said it was one of my favorite.
Huh.
I do the same thing, but I never call them all those terms.
So today we're going to braise chicken legs and thighs. So the dark meat of our chicken, which is generally a lot tougher. Braised chicken legs and thighs with tart green apples. That's what we're going to call this dish, with tart green apples. And I have some, there's Granny Smith apples here. Nice little tart apple. Less on the sweet end, more on the tart end.
Are these recipes you did in the restaurant, or just
No, these are just dishes that
Top of
I
the
feel
head.
demonstrate the technique. Right, that's why we're doing these dishes.
Is apple juice you said?
Excuse
You
me?
As a city product, like lemon juice? Did you ever use it like lemon juice?
Do I ever use lemon
No,
juice?
could you use it like is it acidic like lemon juice?
No.
apple juice?
Oh, apple juice? Sure.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, it's less acidic and more sweet though. You know, it's not as, it's not going to be as sour or tart as lemon juice is going to be,
Unless it gets
obviously.
oily.
You know, well then it's just going to ferment, turn bad. So no, these are dishes that I not necessarily have done in a restaurant. I've done them before, plenty of times, but they're more geared towards showing you the actual technique and towards showing you the technique. And again, the technique is the technique. Doesn't matter if I'm braising chicken or braising short ribs. Basically the same thing. The blanquette we're going to do, I have done versions of that in a restaurant, certainly. So anyway, braised chicken legs and thighs, tart green apples. For a stew, we're going to do a white stew and a brown stew. Our white stew will be our blanquette. Our brown stew will be our ragout, R-A-G-O-U-T, right? Ragout.
How you spell the first one?
Blanquette is B-L-A-N,
This is for the white stew, right?
right? Q-U-E-T-T-E. Anyone seen Zeph? Oh, there he is. I'm sorry. I'm looking around. I didn't see it. Sorry, buddy.
Right, good, right?
Thought you were missing. Should have known better. Blanquette. B-L-A-N-Q-U-E-T-T-E. Blanquette.
And the brown stools are ragu.
Ragout.
Spell that.
R-A-G-O-U-T. So our ragout is going to be a ragout. It's going to be a pork ragout with olives and chilies. Olives and chilies.
Pork ragu?
Pork ragout, olives and chilies. We're also going to have rice and some tomato in that dish. And we're going to cook the rice right in the stew. That way that rice is not only going to absorb the flavor of that liquid, but it'll also act to thicken our liquid as it absorbs, right? So we'll actually see some gelatinization going on And then our blanquette is going to be a blanquette of chicken breast. Now remember, a blanquette is a white stew. White stew. Now classically, it's all white vegetables, all white meat. So chicken or veal, right? Pork. That's it. With a classic blanquette. You wouldn't have a blanquette of beef. This doesn't happen. It's called the dog, the definitely D-A-U-B-E. So a blanquette is going to be chicken breast. Okay? Now chicken breast is kind of tender, but we're going to take it through a nice long cooking process, not as long as we might do for our legs and thighs. Okay? And all white vegetables. So I have an assortment of some root vegetable here. I obviously have some onion. Carrot and celery, even though this onion, carrot, celery is part of our basic mirepoix, our basic seasoning, we're not going to use that in our blanquette. We're going to rely on more of our root vegetable. And I have a rutabaga here. This is a rutabaga. And I wanted to wait to show you before I peeled it. Very, very waxy peel to it. Nice kind of white golden flesh. And has somewhat of I'll cut a little bit for you guys to taste if you like. Raw has a little bit of a bitter quality to it, even cooked slightly, slightly bitter. Nice.
Cook it by itself?
Pardon me?
Cook it by itself?
Could you cook it by itself?
Like as a single dish?
Sure. You could use it as it's very starchy, so you could use it as a starch in a dish. In something like this, in our blanquette or a stew, you would use it as a combination starch vegetable because it is a vegetable, but it's a starchy root vegetable. So it kind of can double duty there,
Sort of like a potato?
Sure. Kind of like a potato, it's going to cook differently though.
Chef, are they related to potatoes?
No. Well, it's a root vegetable. Potato is actually a tuber, so they're a little different.
Okay.
Close though. Close in texture. So, let me, just going to cut a little bit of this so you can taste. Very hard. I'm going to cut our root end off.
What is a rutabaga like? Turn up something like that. How you spell it?
Rutabaga is R-U-T-A, B-E-G-A, rutabaga. Okay. I want to pass that around. You can take a little bite of that if you like.
So they'll get brown too?
They can brown a little bit, yeah. Less, it'll take longer for it to brown than a potato.
Like a
Yeah.
Tastes similar to potato.
Here, we have a turnip. All right, this is a turnip. Okay, purplish top, whitish bottom, very white flesh, and a little softer than our rutabaga.
You got no taste? All right. I gotta drink my Pepsi.
Well, cooking, is going to bring out a little bit more of the flavor. Yeah, good. It's a good, tastes a little bit like that horseradish, which is another root.
Like it's not spicy, but you know how you get that roll
Right.
in your mouth first?
Yeah, you got a similar taste to horseradish and a potato.
Now another, so this is a turnip.
I think I tasted that before.
Another similar veg.
It's like braise a little bit.
Ladies and gentlemen, calm down. Another vegetable similar that we might use with these is parsnip. Parsnip. Parsnip looks like a white carrot. It looks like a white carrot.
Are those in season?
Yeah. These are, well, they're coming into fall. In the dead of summer, no. Fall through the winter. you'll get all these root vegetables. These are the kinds of things here in Philadelphia, along the East Coast. These are the kind of things we should eat in the winter. It's what grows in the winter, right? Fall through the winter, that's what we really should be eating. Okay, so you notice all my peel, all my trash in. I'm going to trim up a little bit of this first.
You put your potato on water, Chef.
Yep, potatoes in water.
Does the rutabaga turn or stay that color?
Yeah, it'll turn eventually. All these will turn because of what in them? Anyone remember? Flavone in the white vegetables.
Flavone.
The color pigment flavone. And this one, turnip, you can really just smell cutting it. And you're really going to taste the horseradish now. Not as strong as horseradish, not as hot, but definitely that bitter, a little bit of bitter heat.
So what is it, that's horseradish?
That's turnip.
Turnip.
It tastes like, it tastes like. This horseradish?
Ah, good for you. All right,
I like it better than
all my trash is done. I have a clean board to start with, no mess.
They smell the same.
This one tastes, I like the taste better.
I like this one better.
Yeah, I like the
They
this
taste the
one.
same, but this one,
It's a little sweeter.
This hard.
it is the same.
Almost numbs your tongue a little bit.
But you ain't know what it is.
Yeah, it was like,
Okay, so let's go, let's focus.
So we got, one that is rutabaga, turnips, and what else? You got potatoes over there?
Potatoes, rutabaga,
Does that more flavor when you
turnip,
cook them?
pardon me?
More flavor when you cook them?
Yes, yeah, cooking, we're going to extract a little bit of flavor out. Most things, by cooking, we can extract a little more flavor out.
You said rutabaga and turnip, that's it?
Rutabaga, turnip, and I have potato in there.
Potato.
So first thing I'm going to get together is my ingredients for our braise, right? Our braised chicken. Okay. So real quick,
Braised chicken. You got onions.
I'm just rough chopping some medium diced onion.
Those are huge.
That's what mom was. I think mom was big.
Medium is kind of big though. Big is big. Big is big.
I'm going to braise in this, in our sauteed pan here. We're only doing a small portion. Heating up our pan.
That you're heating up,
What?
that's your broth you're heating up.
Yeah, it's just stock. It was frozen. I'm just thawing it, so I got it in a water bath. See, it still has some chunk of ice in it. So just keep it in a water bath, keeping it hot, so it kind of defrosts. So on my carrot, I have some of my onion. I just have a nice, large, medium, kind of rough chop there. And this is going to cook a while, so these will cook down a little bit. My carrot, I'm going to cut in my oblique. you remember the oblique cut from our video way back, right?
Bias.
I'm cutting on the bias. I'm going to turn my vegetable, right? 180 degrees. Cut on the bias again. So what it's giving me is a three-sided vegetable. And I got a little more cooking surface. It's a little bit decorative, you know, rather than just cutting a wedge of it, right?
What's the size?
Okay. When I get to the large part of it, I'm going to cut it in half, just so it's a little smaller. And then on the bias, just alternating. So I have a similar size, shape vegetable. My celery, I'm going to take, just cut on the bias in about an inch length piece. I'm not going to use all this. And I'm going to put some of my apple in, right in with the braise.
I don't respect sir. They can look the only change.
And my apple's going to break down a good deal. So when I cut this, I'm going to want to cut it in a very large wedge. And as it cooks for that nice hour there, at least, it's going to really soften up and break down. Right, so I cut my apple in half, cut it in half again. In a real easy way, we can, just on the diagonal a little bit, we're cutting out our seeds. Right? Cutting out the middle of our apple that way. I can trim up any peel I missed in there. Okay? So basically quartering it on the diagonal, cut out our seeds. That saves you the trouble of coring and all that stuff, right? And I'm getting the most out of my apple.
So they gonna stay this size?
No, they're going to get a little smaller because they're going to break down. They're going to really soften up.
No more.
No, I don't think I'm going to leave them as is. My apples, keep them in a little water. Ideally, we'd like some lemon in this water. I don't have a lemon with me. I don't think I do.
Chef, if you put lemon on your cutting board, but you're cutting onions, will that keep your iceberg?
Yeah. So, we've got our mise en place for our braise. Okay. I've got my chicken here. I'm going to cut that chicken just before it goes into the pan. Next thing I'm going to do is get my mise en place together for my ragu. So now, I have some olives, my rice, I have my tomato product. These are some little Thai bird chilies. They're going to give us a nice little heat in there. And I have some onion. Everything's right on the table there. Rice, olives, tomato. Mhm.
This for the blanket. For the braise. Rice is for the
Then our bell pepper, as everyone can see. Our bell pepper, I have a half of a yellow bell pepper here. We can take our red bell pepper, split it in half. I'm going to take the stem and seeds out all in one shot. What I like to do then is quarter it, and from here, I'm taking out all the white rib, right? That's a lot bitter, so we're going to remove that. A lot more bitter than the rest of the vegetable, so we'll remove that. Take any seeds. Same thing with the yellow. Okay. Just going to dice this up. Okay.
Very colorful.
Our bell pepper. And I'm trying to keep all of our ingredients, even with our braise, we're keeping our ingredients a little bit separate, right? They're going to cook a little differently, this onion and bell pepper. So we want to have those, separated.
What kind of olives do you use?
These are black olives, just plain old canned black olives. You could really use, really any kind for this dish. So now, we're going to get our mise en place together for our blanquette. I have my pork here. I've got a pork tenderloin. I'm going to use that for our ragu. I got my chicken breast for my blanquette. And ideally, in something like the my ragu, I probably wouldn't use a tenderloin or a loin. I'd probably want a tougher cut. Tougher cut, like pork butt or shoulder, something like that. And I'm going to cut some of my root veg. These are all going to get diced. Pardon me? No, pork loin is done.
This is for the.
This is for the
blanquette.
blanquette. This is for the blanquette.
Yeah, rutabagas, tomatoes, and turnips. Potatoes. This is all.
No, breast.
And a white, white chicken breast.
This is the braise with the leg and thigh, blanquette with the breast. So I'm cutting my turnip, just cutting around the root end a little bit. Again, just dicing. These are very tough. They're going to take a little long cooking process here.
Is that okay if the broth cups swollen up like that?
Yeah, it's just steam inside. So if you notice, we got these popping like this. We just let out that steam. I'm just going to shut that off. They could sit in the hot water and throw them. Okay. Turnips. Take my rutabaga. Taking some nice slices off that we could dice. On the end, there's a root. Just on this end, not through the middle.
It's not.
Yeah. Very, very firm. Good. That should be plenty of our rutabaga. And you could use these like a potato, cook them, puree them. Taking our potato. Notice how starchier the potato is sticking to my knife. Notice cutting all my logs, then we'll just go back, cut our dice. So our potato, I want to keep it out. I want to work quick. If they were to sit any length of time, it's going to oxidize, right?
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to put it in the water. I'm going to play it safe. Keep it in the water so it doesn't turn on me. So our root vegetable, we have our chicken. We're also going to have some mushrooms in our blanquette. Regular button mushrooms.
Mushrooms.
Button mushrooms. Button mushrooms. And I'm just trimming off a little bit of the stem end. And then I'm just going to quarter them. like the quartered mushroom rather than the slice. Just holds up a lot better in the long cooking. It looks more of like a nice garnish in the finished dish rather than a sliced mushroom that's going to break down a lot, you know, and not look like much. So my larger one, I'm just cutting in 6s. I have my mushrooms. Well, extra. Okay, we're good. The first dish I'm going to start is my chicken, my braised chicken. One thing I know I need to do is separate my leg and thigh. They're still in one piece. I'll do that. I want to take a little precaution, move over one cutting board so I don't get anything contaminated. No cross-contamination here, right? Roll up my sleeves. Taking out our leg and thigh. Now remember last week when we deboned our leg and thigh, we talked about separating this guy.
Yeah.
You have that little line of fat here, right? Where we cut down that line of fat, we're right in between the joint of the leg and thigh. Separates easily for us. Same thing on this one. Okay. If you get stuck there and you're in the wrong spot, you can back up and try it again. Okay. On these thighs, we can point out we've lost some of the oyster here, right? So we don't have as big of a portion as we really should have. You can look at this and see when they butchered it that we didn't get everything that we could have here. Okay? So, you know, we're missing out on a little bit. So, going on my board. I'm going to get my pan nice and hot. I'm going to season the chicken, salt and pepper. Okay. Both sides. And I'm also going to take a little flour. I'm going to just dust these guys very lightly. Kind of like dredging, right? A little light dust. This is going to offer a little bit of protection to the chicken, but it's also going to help thicken my sauce. Right? That flour in there is going to help thicken my sauce a little bit. So remember our braising combination method, right? Starting with dry heat. Nice pan, barely any fat in there. Want it good and hot. Okay, I wait till my oil, my fat heats up. I want to see a little shimmer in that pan. And right in there. Let it recover a little bit. as that's cooking, I'm going to get the other meats, proteins ready for our dishes. Just going to let that get some good sears on it. For my ragu, my pork ragu, like I said, I have a little loin here. A little bit of a silver skin I'm going to want to trim off. Silver skin, unlike fat, look, I have some fat right on the top here. That's fine, fat will melt. But below that, you have some connective tissue. It has a silver shine to it. We're going to call that silver skin. We're going to trim that. That won't dissolve, it won't melt, it won't go anywhere. Just shrinks up on your meat. Okay. So how big should the pieces of meat be for my ragu?
Portion.
Small, like, bite size,
Like the little.
no more than an inch big, right? It's got to fit on a fork or a spoon. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Okay, it's a nice brown color on it. All right, that's what we're looking for. We're going to get those nice and brown all around. And the, that flare up that was just the water off my tongs going in. Okay. Okay, my thighs, chicken thighs, got a good browning on the bottom side. We're going to remove those. I'm going to let my legs keep going for a little while I start adding my vegetables. My carrots, obviously, are my most dense. They're going to take the longest. So I'm going to add those to the pan. And here we would probably have 2 entree-sized portions. So I'm going to kind of plan it that way. Get my sleeves back down, protect my arms now. Looking for color all around on my legs too. You can see immediately on our carrots, we're starting to get some browning, some nice caramelization, right? We still have nice high heat. I'm going to add my celery. And these don't need to be fully cooked, we're just developing some color. We can immediately smell that going on, right? Some of our onion. Say it again?
You could do this with the brush, with the bone in as well, right?
Bone in? Yeah, well, we have the bone in our thigh and leg. These aren't boneless. You could do it boneless. I'm going to season up my vegetables. We seasoned our chicken, no reason not to season our vegetables as well. And I'm also going to throw in a little dry herbs. I'm going to throw them in a little bit at the start of our cooking so they rehydrate. I have some dry parsley and dry chervil. And now you guys can see the use of the dry herbs. A little pinch of each. Parsley and chervil. And remember, with dry heat like this, you don't want to constantly be flipping it. If you're up in the air flipping it, then it's not cooking. It's not on the fire. Okay? So every once in a while, you give it a little toss, get it back on the heat. And you can actually see it's pretty cool that our little piece of onion there was ready to leap out of the pan. It's so hot. You guys all right back there? So with my vegetables, now I'm going to add some of my apple. And I'm going to cut my apple down. We're about an inch around, right, Natalie? Natalie, about an inch around. You promised me that.
I'm trying to.
Just start yelling "bam" or something to keep you guys awake.
Made a nice loud gun job.
All right, so we see some nice color on our veg, right?
Yes, sir.
We're going to work our chicken back into the pan. Now what's the next step in our process? Liquid, deglazing. I have some chicken stock. What's going on back there? Do I have to separate you guys? A lot of talking, but what's going on back there? Liquid. Chicken stock. How much am I adding?
About a cup.
Covering my product halfway. Then what do I do? Say it again. Simmer, right. Bring it down to a simmer. All right, so we can see we're so hot, that liquid immediately hitting a boil, which is cool. We're going to want to cover this.
I never heard of them. That was in my homework.
Excuse me?
You gonna cover that with food?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Don't line your hand with a woman, not don't
We're going to cover it. You know, and at home with your nice, cookware, you could use a lid. But rarely in a restaurant world will you find a lid. cooks don't know how to take care of lids. Okay, so now I'm going into an oven, 300 degrees in my oven. Okay, why not keep it on the stovetop? What's the advantage in the oven?
It frees up the range.
Circulate.
Frees up the range, and I get nice uniform cooking because I have heat all around, not just heat on the bottom of the pan. Right? So heat all around, not just heat on the bottom of the pan. Okay. Moving on to our pork ragu. Okay. I have my pork here, cubed. That pot's getting nice and hot. That's good.
Where that pork come from?
Where'd it come from? I mean, like,
Store.
I don't know.
This is something else you bought.
You know, one of our vendors.
What kind of pepper you said they were?
These are Thai bird peppers, Thai bird chilies. So again, Thai, Thai, bird, B-I-R-D, Thai bird. A little salt. All around. Salting all around. You want to make sure that you're fairly dry, right? For a good sear. This pepper. And again, nice little dusting of flour, mixing it around. Now you want to do this right before you're ready to go into the pot. You don't want to let it sit with flour for a long time. Yeah, the meat's just going to absorb that flour. It's going to get all pasty, and that stuff's going to peel off as it cooks. It's you know, not so good. Okay. A little hot fat in our pan. Get it good and hot. High heat.
You season that with salt?
Salt and pepper. Notice the sizzle. I'm going in one at a time. Why not just dump it all in there?
So it goes bland.
And everything you get with the oil will not recover.
Right. I dump it all in there. The temperature of that oil is going to go way down. What's going to happen to the meat then?
It's gonna start simmering.
It's going to simmer in liquid, right? It's just going to basically steam. It's not going to brown. So I'm letting it nice and hot. I can feel it right on my arm. We're letting this, we're going to let this brown. Turn it over. This is a brown stew, so we want that brown on all sides of our meat. Kind of taking my time, letting all the meat get brown. Woo! It's too hot in the hot tub. So at this point, I'm going to add my Thai bird chilies. I'm not going to even cut them. I'm going to leave them whole. gonna let that, the heat hit those chilies. They're pretty hot, right? So I don't wanna kinda blow everybody away with the heat. All right, we're just gonna extract a little bit of that heat and flavor in their oil. You can actually smell them already. We're popping. Moving our meat around. Make sure we're getting browning. That wouldn't be good. Nice high chili pepper popping in your eye. Another one. That's just the steam inside popping out. And I'm trying to bust them open now so they don't pop anymore. Okay. Good. Everything's looking nice and brown.